Thank you so much, Andrea. It is such a joy to be with all of you. Friends, it is all on fire. And if you're feeling afraid, that's a very reasonable fear to be experiencing right now. But this is what I want to start by saying. Democracy is not only the goal, it is the way. It is the way through the chaos and fear. And let's be clear, things are very serious. Simply put, it's about who has power in our country and how we can ensure that government by the consent of the governed. We've watched with alarm as the majority of autocratically minded Supreme Court justices have made countless decisions this term that have reshaped the nature of the American presidency, that have turned their back on the expertise of agencies, that have rolled back our rights and our protections. They are doing the bidding of the billionaire reactionaries who put them there. Our Congress is continuing to be populated with lawmakers who supported the insurrection and who see problems facing Americans as opportunities for prosecuting their opponents or for stoking culture wars. Senators from states that represent a small minority of Americans have the ability to hold up legislation in the Senate through the filibuster rule. And meanwhile, too many in our media are making democracy one issue among many, treating this election as if it weren't a referendum on American democracy itself. And so where do we come in? We hear all of this. We are overwhelmed with these messages daily on news, on social media. And all of these messages have this way of putting us in the spectator role, making us feel there's very little we can do. These autocratic justices on the court, they hand down decisions and we watch in horror. We think democracy is dying before our very eyes. Perhaps you've gotten the frantic tweets or texts from friends saying, what in the world is going on? And so when we see this happening, there's this cycle that starts. We then start feeling fearful. And in that fear, we begin to feel powerless against this tidal wave coming at us. And then we end up in behavior that has us either doing nothing. I'm going to change the channel. I'm going to walk away and I'm just going to walk away from it all, or anxiously obsessing. And we can't stop searching down the next horrible story. The banners come across and we're clicking and we're saying democracy is dying before our eyes, and we're feeling more fearful and more powerless, and we obsess some more or we try to turn away, and this cycle goes and it goes. When we get rooted in fear, we become passive. That fear produces anxiety. Anxiety leads to despair, and despair leads to inaction. So we have to inquire, who benefits when we are afraid? Who benefits when we are afraid? The same interests that will benefit from our inaction. So I tell you tonight, we must not succumb to fear. We will not succumb to fear. We will call fear's bluff. How do we do this? By remembering who we are. We are the people. We are the people. And this next slide shows what Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson wrote in her dissent from Trump v. US. And it is this sentence that continues to keep my heart beating strong. She wrote, as we enter this uncharted territory, the people in their wisdom will need to remain ever attentive, consistently fulfilling their established role in our constitutional democracy, and thus collectively serving as the ultimate safeguard against any chaos spawned by this decision. Justice Brown Jackson reminded us of our power and our responsibility in this moment and in every moment of our democracy. We must remember who we are. Next slide. Who are we? We are the people. And we remember that we, the people, have the power. We think, I am part of a community that believes and acts for democracy. We are gathered here by the hundreds, and there are many, many more that are going to watch this recording. We are part of a community that believes and acts for democracy. And as we begin to remember that, as we introduce ourselves in the chat, as we ask our questions and have those questions answered, or have those questions cause more questions, we know that we are not alone. We are together as a community, and we begin to feel that hope and power, and that hope and power propels us to a new kind of behavior, to take action for our democracy, to not crumble in despair, to not be isolated, but to reach toward one another, knowing that it is our collective action as the people of this nation that will serve as the bulwark for our democracy. We break the cycle of fear by acting together. So 2 things then. Next slide. Number 1, very important. We do not stay silent. We do not stay silent. We insist that Congress take action. Congress are our elected representatives. We must engage them. Now, I know some of you are saying already, oh, but Noelle, the lawmakers in there, they're completely unresponsive to us. Oh, but what about that filibuster you mentioned before? What are we going to do about it? We have to keep the pressure on. It is never a waste of time to engage Congress. And in fact, it's essential and it's our responsibility within this democracy. Look, the Senate Judiciary has oversight of the Supreme Court, despite some justices' thoughts to the contrary. The Senate Judiciary Committee can hold hearings, can compel subpoenas, and we at the Worker Circle have been among many other organizations in civil society calling for hearings on judicial ethics, including subpoenas of Leonard Leo and Harlan Crow, money and strategy behind the takeover of the court. We were just discussing how Representative Ocasio-Cortez has filed impeachment charges against Justices Thomas and Alito. Our members of Congress need to respond. And so we'll keep engaging them. We'll engage them by visiting. We'll engage them by emailing. We'll engage them by telephoning them. We will engage them through protest as well. I know earlier today someone said, in the past, at grave moments, in the midst of civil rights, hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets. What happened? Why didn't anybody race down to the Supreme Court on that Monday when this terrible decision came down? Well, some of it might be the heat, but I think more of it is that we have to get our feet under us, that we have to reach to one another and remind ourselves of our power and our responsibility. So protest absolutely is one thing. And as we move forward, there are going to be more and more opportunities for you to take action specifically around court issues. Now, if you would like to explore how to be an effective advocate, we've got a program for you. The Center for Common Ground and the Worker Circle have been hosting monthly gatherings. Next Thursday will be our final effective advocate for this year, but I invite you to join us because here we're going to discuss best practices for engaging Congress. We'll be talking about the hurdles that we have to get bills over in order to get them to the floor and get them to a vote. We're going to be talking about the important legislation that we still need to keep pressure on for its passage. So definitely join us next Thursday and tell a friend. So number one, we do not stay silent, we engage Congress. Number two, we remain strategic. Look, friends, we need to do everything in our power to help voters in vote suppressed states surmount the obstacles that have been intentionally placed in their way. This is what we're doing with the Center for Common Ground. Thank goodness for the Center for Common Ground. You know why? We know it works. We know it works. We know it's strategic. We know when we do this, when we phone bank, when we postcard, when we reach out to people, and I know there'll be some opportunities later in the year to be able to do GOTV and more. When we do this, we are catalyzing a multiracial force for democracy that will shape our nation for generations to come. We will not give in to fear. Next slide. We will acknowledge it because that fear reminds us of the stakes. We will call fear's bluff by remembering we are the people, and we will act from our values together. Final slide. The great Congressman, the late John Lewis, once wrote, as he reflected on the courage of the freedom riders, he said, courage is a reflection of the heart. It is a reflection of something deep within the man or woman or even child who must resist and must defy an authority that is morally wrong. Courage makes us march on despite fear and doubt on the road to justice. It's a road to justice. There is fear that we carry with us, but we march on together. We march on together, rooted in the values that we share and unrelenting in our pursuit of the strong democracy, the multiracial democracy, the long-awaited promise of our democracy that America must become. Thank you.